My name is Thao. My family and I came to Minnesota on August 13, 1983 as a political refugee. I came from Laos and I was 8 years old at the time. Yeah, I think one of my favorite memory was when this is after the war and our family was in exile. We're trying to get across to Thailand, and we came to a town that was called a village that was called Nam Nho in Laos. And I remember my dad and some of the relatives, they built this house, and it's really cool because they built like a platform, and then they put a house on top of that. But the most cool thing was that I would say maybe 300 feet away there was a river or a creek, and I spent a lot of time in that creek. I didn't know how to swim, but it was just one of the places where I would go and hang out. Lots of kids, and then during the flood season, the rain season, that creek would flood, and the way to get to the creek, to the water during the dry season, you have to slide down this kind of like a water. It's a slide, for us in those days, and you would slide down to get to the water. But during the flood season, it's this roaring, this power of the water coming through our village, and I just remember that place. It was also a place where I got to explore different things, and we had a garden. It was the last place before we snuck out of Laos into Thailand. So
How old were you then?
I would probably 6, maybe 5 going to 6 that time. We didn't keep track of time really or age back then, but yeah, it was really memorable. I think for the Hmong Americans, our story was that during the Vietnam War, there was another war, a proxy war called the Secret War that was happening in Laos to stop the spread of communism. And so the CIA, the Hmong, had this partnership, and we assisted American government at that time. So in 1975, when the United States left Vietnam, they also took all the resources and the help out of Laos, and the Hmong were left to fend for themselves, those who sided with the Americans. And because of that, we couldn't stay in our country at that time, and so that's why we came to Thailand as political refugee, and then found our way. We were sponsored by an organization in Minnesota. That's how my family got here. And those are the reason why we came here. It's very similar. What's happening today and in the Middle East is also very similar to our experience and how we got here. I think it was a mixed interaction. There were folks who didn't even know that we were here, and then there was folks who treated us well, like our sponsor. They treated us well, but there were also folks who did not treat us well. I remember being called chink, gook, being told to go back to my country. I know that in my young experience, I was really, I was spit on, called different, like I said, names, stuff like that. My situation was so bad that the bus driver moved me to the front seat so that he can keep an eye on me. And it was a really traumatic experience, because you thought that you came out of the refugee camp, you came out of a war zone, you would come to America, you would be in paradise, but actually it wasn't paradise. Yeah. Definitely, when we first came here, like I mentioned earlier, there's the experience of racial discriminations, but also a lack of support from whether it's government or, at that time, it was just Minnesota just didn't know how to help our wave of refugee. the Southeast Asian refugee. And so we did not have the same access to resource like teachers, right? Bilingual teacher, or just knowing to navigate the system, even the government system, to get support for housing or food. And I think that has changed now. Now I think we are a lot smarter as a city and as a state on how to be more efficient, how to help new immigrants. I think we are more aware of the issue that they face, whether it's discrimination or access to opportunity, and we're more proactive in that. For sure that in terms of policy decision, that being a political refugee, you operate out of a lens understanding the least among us, right? People who's been displaced, people who's been marginalized, people who first language might not be English. And so when you make a decision, you consider all of that. You think through all of that and how your decision can impact them or could benefit them. And I think also that helps you to be respectful of this country, to be respectful of the leaders that come before you. It's just in St. Paul, the Irish, the French, the Swedes, the German, all the folks that have come before. I have a great deal of respect for them, and that our city wouldn't be where we are today without their leadership. And of course, the African American who were courageous in their fight for freedom and access to opportunity and civil rights. And so I think being a immigrant, and just from the policy standpoint, I think we bring that to the table. And then in terms of economic, right? So, we got a business owner, we have people who shop here, who lives here, and then the education system. There's so much contribution that refugee immigrants make to this country. And in fact, it is true. We always say that this country is made of immigrants, and that's why we're so strong. And we shouldn't lose our root. To me, being a Minnesotan means that I give everything I can for the state, and that I appreciate what's here for me. I wouldn't want to go. I'm really glad that our sponsor was from Minnesota, that has given my community, my family, an opportunity to thrive, to go to school, to contribute to this, the well-being, the arts and culture of this state, and I'm really proud of that. To be a Minnesotan also means that I work hard, and that I help seek justice in this state. And just like our founding father, their dream is to create a more perfect union. I believe that in order for us to have a perfect union is to obtain justice, to ensure that everybody has justice, as we recite every day, justice for all. And what that means is that we need to ensure that Minnesota is a place where everybody has justice and have access to what justice is. And if we do that, then we will be living in a place where everybody's happy and sustainable. And for the future, to ensure that we do future planning, and that's our responsibility to make Minnesota a great place for a future generation. And so, it's a long answer, but I'm really proud to be a Minnesotan, and I'm really proud to be from St. Paul. As a Minnesotan now, and the best, I think that as Minnesotan, what we can do for a new immigrant is that don't judge them. Let's take the time to listen to their story and their history, because if we take time to listen to immigrants and their story, we will begin to see and feel the pain that they felt, the hurt that they've gone through, their struggle. As human beings, we may not look like each other, but our pain, our sorrow, and our loss are very similar. And if we can connect with immigrants at that level, then it is much easier for us to combine and our shared interests to co-create a future, to co-create a Minnesota that's inclusive, that we continue this legacy of immigrants that made up this country and this state. And so please take the time to listen to immigrants and their story. I was So during the exile and after the war, I lost two sisters and I lost a younger brother, and they didn't get a chance to come to this country. They never knew what freedom was. They didn't even have enough to eat, and each day that I live, I try to do the best I can. I try to allow them to live through me. And my father, who, when I was in middle school, he went back to join the resistance in Laos, and so he died over there. And my mom raised the rest of us in the housing project. And I think that I'm sharing this story because all immigrants have some sort of story, some sort of loss. And they're just, by living, they are trying to piece those loss back together, trying to recapture their dignity. And I think as human beings, we just want to have an opportunity to live with dignity, to have a dignified life. And in war, that dignity is stripped away from us, not just our family members, but our dignity. And Minnesota can be a place where we let people rebuild and recapture, recuperate their dignity.